Good evening. This is Dr. John Bennett broadcasting from Miami. Today we have the pleasure of having Roger Santos, a gentleman from the West Coast that's heavily steeped in telemedicine. And we'll just kind of have an informal discussion with myself and Mohamad Aburawi, a Libyan doctor who did a year of internship, I believe, in surgery. And he's doing some type of fellowship at Harvard. And maybe he'll explain to us what he's exactly doing. So first we'll introduce Mohamad. Hello, Mohamad. Can you tell a little bit about who you are and what you're doing?
Hi there. Thanks, John, for making this opportunity possible. And I also give my greetings to Roger. I'm Mohamad Aburawi, a Libyan-trained physician, and currently a research fellow at Harvard Medical School, doing a fellowship in transplant surgery. And I'm also a founder of SPETAR, which is the first Libyan telemedicine platform.
Very good. Welcome, Mohamad. And I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions of Roger. So we'll turn it over to you, Roger. Why don't you just introduce yourself and what you've done, and after you've done kind of your intro, Mohamad and I will just ask you a couple of questions. Welcome, Roger.
Certainly. Thank you very much, John, for hosting us and having us, and good to meet you, Marilyn. So I've been engaged in telemedicine for the past 12, 13 years. Formally indoctrinated into telemedicine as a platform through UC Davis School of Medicine, and in the build out of their new facility in Sacramento, California. And from there, kind of evolved into an ongoing exploration of the different areas that are affected when doing telemedicine are significantly different than doing video conferencing. I've been doing video conferencing implementations globally going back to '88. And so communication over video and all of the idiosyncrasies and things that go into making those collaborations happen is evolved into what we call now telemedicine. And I've spent, as I say, about 12, 13 years now doing telemedicine and developing different ways to actually implement, support, and maintain the application and delivery. And working with providers, working with clinics and hospitals, kiosks at.
Well, Roger, can I? I'm sorry to interrupt you, Roger, but the sound seems to be reoccurring. It seems to be breaking up again. Can you please adjust the system a little bit? It was going good for a while, but I don't know what happened.
I'm not sure. Let me just see what I can do here on this end.
Yeah, it's breaking up. We can hardly understand you.
Okay. Here. And
we should have a pretty good sound if you got broadband, especially wired broadband.
Right. Let me change this. Here. Okay.
No, it's good. It's good now. Good.
Is it sounding better?
Yes, it is. Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go on.
No. All righty. Let me know if it does cut out or anything again.
Okay, I will.
So that's my background in a nutshell. Work with organizations that are overarching companies that have hospitals and clinics within their collective facilities, and telemedicine ranging from applications to for people to just pull up their iPhone, their tablet, connect to a physician and do a teleconference that way, where they might be talking about a cold or some such thing, all the way to physicians doing operations using robotics. So the entire gamut, the whole range of what telemedicine really is.
Okay, well, I guess we can start the questions now. So you've worked, like you said, you've worked the whole gamut of jobs in telemedicine and roles in telemedicine, right? From
From the
working for
technical side and implementation and support, yes.
working for companies to working for the government at all.
So right now, I've spent my time working for hospital implementations and corporations that are actual have networks of hospitals and partnerships with clinics and develop and deploy these solutions across multiple states, internationally, and haven't gone to the government side yet. That market is still evolving here.
Yeah.
Government has a role from an administrative standpoint to say you can, provider X can cross state lines and do telemedicine conferences, telestroke, telelung, telehospitalist, whatever their area of expertise is. That's been a contentious thing in the U.S. Being able to share a doctor across state borders. That is being worked through, and more states are becoming accepting of the idea of having doctors out of state provide medical services. So from a government standpoint, that's probably the most engaged I've come to be involved with them, and that is whatever limitations were in place. But from a technical standpoint, government plays a very small role within the context of current deployment of telemedicine in use of telemedicine. Still a private sector phenomenon.
Yeah, I know that some states were pretty set against it. I know Florida. Florida's a tough state for telemedicine, and I think they've started reimbursing lately. The CMC is called. They started reimbursing for telemedicine calls. And there's some, which are the states that are really progressive, that are on the front? Well, Arizona is one state, isn't it? That's really out front there.
Right. So there are several that are doing very well. A few back east where it's starting to take hold. The where the government did play a role in the FCC was they put out a grant fund to all states that wanted to participate and developed a infrastructure network that was exclusive to telemedicine to bolster the rural community and lower income communities for getting access, so broadband access to these locations so that telemedicine could then take hold. The most successful state in adopting that funding and growing its business into a very robust network infrastructure has been California. They actually started at the same point as everyone. Some states fell off the grid of that program from the FCC, but it launched a lot of assistance that was desperately needed to grow the broadband out to areas where it wasn't. And it's incentivized individuals in these rural areas, hospitals, clinics, to join and participate because there was a financial component where the grant paid for so much time, a year or so, of service and solution. It paid for the broadband provider to take the signal out to those rural areas. Otherwise, density and population would never have allowed for the expansion of the broadband as quickly and as far out as it did. You have to have a density of population, cover the cost for numbers of bodies of use. So the program really did help move forward, at least in California, that whole initiative. And they've got a very good program here. So I would have to say for square footage and size of state, California probably has done the largest and heaviest lift.
Yeah, that's the impression I get too. From the little I know, I've interacted a little bit with. I think his name is Dr. Ron Goldberg from Arizona. I think they have a pretty good. That's the only. I haven't interacted at all with telemedicine people in California, but in Arizona, they really seem to be on top of their game. And as far as foreign countries, my impression um, is India and Australia seem to be pretty advanced in telemedicine, maybe more than the United States. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I do. I was fortunate enough to be mentored in my master's program for health informatics by an individual who helped Australia actually launch their telemedicine program. Huge advocate for telemedicine. And it's Dr. Peter Yellowlees, who came to UC Davis and headed up the informatics program for quite some time. Tremendous support and advocate and knowledgeable on the use and application of telemedicine, and helped Australia really build initially its infrastructure. And that's going back to the, the 90s and early 2000s. And, so yes, they have a very impressive program going on out there right now.
Yeah. That Mohammed, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I think what Roger said is really good. I just wanted to touch back on the point between the private sector and the government sector, and where is telemedicine really gonna impact, or where is telemedicine really gonna be like implemented? Is it gonna be on the private part or in the government part? Because this is the question we have in Libya and other governments, developing countries. Because when I speak with the investors or when I speak with other partners, it's always this notion that the government is gonna implement this structure. But I think it's on the private sector to do most of the job. The government role is mostly regulatory only. So I don't know what's your catch on that.
No, I agree with you totally. The role of the government here in the U.S. has been to seed the interest for doing it, try to clear roadblocks. For example, again, coming back to the doctors can only provide services within the state in which they are licensed, and they can't go outside. Well, that really kind of limited and defeated the idea of the telemedicine program. So if you get a mental idea that telemedicine is an optimal way to take a shrinking resource, providers, doctors, and who are more and more specializing in a particular area, and making them more available. So your hospitals and your clinics in certain regions aren't relying on one physician to cover 3 or 4 hospitals, 5 hospitals in a 200-300 mile radius. You now have a specialist of virtually any skill set who can reach any hospital at a moment's notice. And where this has become extremely prevalent and useful for us is in the area of stroke victims. Time is absolutely critical in the case of a stroke victim, and getting them diagnosed and get the treatment set up and get them through the admission process is paramount to their success of recovery. So with the telemedicine, as soon as the patient comes in, the doctor is notified, calls in, and is there instantly. And when you're talking about hospitals with 15, 20 beds, at any given time, if there's a major rush, those beds can be filled, but you just don't have that many doctors to run around to all those rooms. You augment your staff for generalist practices with telemedicine, and you have a much more effective triage component to your ER, and you're able to move those patients more readily, either get them taken care of and move them out, or move them into the OR or into the hospital for long-term care, whatever the case may be. So you have a larger pool of resources to draw on. And from the provider side, it's extremely attractive because you may be a neurologist, and that's your specialty. How many cases are going to come through the door that you're going to be called upon for your area of expertise in a hospital in any given week, let alone any given night. Whereas if you're on call in a telemedicine capacity, anyone, anywhere, you might get 10, 15 cases a night, and putting your skill sets to much better use. Um, this dynamic has attracted a great deal more of the doctors to participate in these programs. One, because they can be anywhere they want to be, and two, they can provide the service that they went to school specifically to do. And while stitches on a 6-year-old or scraping up his arm on the street is a very rewarding and self-gratifying thing, for a neurologist it's not much of a big deal. So now you can apply those specific to the growing, expanding need of the population. And getting into the rural environments, the private sector does a much better job of attracting both provider and sites that want to participate. There are financial benefits to doing that, where the government would be a hindrance to the progress and speed and efficiency of which you would try to implement. Bureaucracy does exactly what bureaucracy does, and that's reduce effectiveness. And so we've been fortunate that the government has put a balance to its participation in this as an incentivizer and a thing that gets some roadblocks out of the way the private sector can't move, but then letting the private sector figure out that there is a growing market here of patients. The providers have figured out, seemingly by surprise, and it shouldn't have been, that there's a great deal of opportunity for them to provide the payment for these solutions as the cost goes down dramatically. If they're not covering the cost of the brick and mortar, and they're interfacing with patients in the case of applications, iPhone, tablet, whatever application to provider sitting at home on a desk, the cost of that console drops immensely. We've also, providers have put in place here an incentive for hospitals not to readmit. Well, like any case where if you're a student at school or you're doing anything with someone who specializes in something, you get to interface with that person. But the minute you walk away, what did they say? What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to work this? Do I go back to the hospital and have a meeting with them because I forgot things I need to do? What is my follow-up? Or do I use telemedicine as my tool to stay engaged, stay communicated, but stay out of the expensive brick and mortar facility and let the more traumatic cases take those spaces? Just a huge win, both from a financial standpoint for the hospital, for the doctor, and the payer solution. And because it is in the private sector development, you have a lot more business that can build around that infrastructure to do the support pieces, which is where my role as a telemedicine informaticist comes into play, and that is, how do you set up a network internal to the hospital? How do you traverse the firewall so that you don't intrude your H.323 or SIP call, that's a video single stream call? How do you get to the provider without putting the hospital network at risk? What do you need in the way of wireless or wired infrastructure within the facility? What are some of the pros and cons and limitations to a mobile device for care and treatment? What is the experience for the physician? If I'm doing a consult, I need to control, say, the camera. In the case of a hospital, patients in the room, I have a cart, it has a camera, microphone, and as a physician, I need to move the camera and manipulate it in a way that allows me to see what I need to see. What are some of the limitations around standard video conferencing devices that don't account for it? Video conferencing grew up around business, and business requirements, education requirements don't rise to the same exacting level of technical acuity that medical response and requirements do. So telemedicine is video conferencing, but on steroids. And the requirements for a provider to do their job, the tolerances for communication, for response, using WebRTC, control, real-time control, of devices over distance is paramount. And ensuring the bandwidth ensuring the signal strength, ensuring the security of that content over public and private network as it works its way through whatever number of nodes it goes through to get from provider to patient. These are all the challenges that the IT private sector world have been confronted with. Again, never confronting that level of issue or concern in the business environment for video conferencing or distance education. Just a completely different requirement level, that order of magnitude different. So, understanding the end-to-end connectivity from the AV that is the interface for the patient to the AV that is the interface for the provider, and absolutely everything else that falls in between. Working with IT infrastructure folks and educating them, working with external network solutions, like California's FCC-funded program for broadband. They've put security levels in and isolated their network to be an exclusive private network. The attacks, cyber attacks on hospitals and clinics for getting IDs and identification information has gone exponentially, so security has had to increase exponentially, making the communication part even more difficult, but not impossible, but certainly a challenge. So the whole sector of support around telemedicine has just boomed and expanded. And telemedicine has only reached the direct patient to doctor through iPhone and app in a very recent period. By recent, I mean in the last 2-3 years, effectively. Still has a little ways to go, but it is working and functional and happening and helping a lot of folks. Areas that telemedicine still has to reach out to and will benefit are long-term care, assisted living, nursing facilities, rehab facilities. So reaching beyond the hospital wall into many other areas of medical support and infrastructure is still yet to be gotten to. And I think where we're at here in the U.S. is still educating people what telemedicine is and how it works, and helping them understand the pedagogical approach to building a foundation for that infrastructure, for them to use it in a ubiquitous way.
Gary, could you comment? I know that there are different subspecialties in telemedicine, like telepsychiatry, teleneurology, teleradiology, and I know that teleradiology was one of the first ones because it was not so much patient care, it's more interpretation of images. Could you comment on the progress of the different subspecialties in telemedicine and where they're at now?
Is that for me or for
Well, I think you, because you have more experience.
Okay. So yes, the sharing of PACS images, the sharing of electronic health records, the sharing of data that is static has been around for a while.
Yeah.
And that was the initial idea of collaborative communication in a visual sense. Telemedicine started off with its roots in just phone calls. You would call a specialist. They would walk the general practitioner through a scenario, and that was considered telemedicine. So now, with the added bonus of visual aid, it started with the images that could be shared back and forth for assessments and evaluations. Then evolved into, well, let's utilize this video conferencing we've been doing for forever. And initially, they realized that it simply wasn't robust enough to handle what their needs were. And by robust enough, I mean medicine is very exact. You need to be able to see something as if you were actually there. And in order for the colors to be true, if you've got green rash, it needs to be green, not purple, or your dermatologist is going to be completely confused. So you really have to understand that clarity of the image, the quality, the color exacting, and motion and movement have to be as close to closed-circuit television, if you will,
Yeah.
as possible. And that was a very difficult thing, given the bandwidths of network and the infrastructure of the internet and that. Having been involved in technology back when the internet actually started to become a real thing, I've seen the evolution of its infrastructure, bandwidth for communication, for security, for everything. These things had to happen in a way that have only recently been applicable. So when we said, I am now going to start doing a conference, and the clarity of that video was raised to the point where I can have that communication. Right now, in this conference, there is pixeling and dithering. That's an image term for what happens to the image as the codec, which is the process of taking the video, turning it into a visual format, and compressing it and sending it out. The compression component of that process, that codec, had to be not so restricted. The early days, bandwidth was restricted, so you had to compress a lot. And compression doesn't actually mean a sponge that you squeeze and you get smaller, and then when you release it, it's nice and fluffy again. Compression in video means you're throwing data out. And when you throw data out, you don't get that data back. The other end has to interpret what it's getting. It has to take what's in motion and make that refresh of that imagery happen in as close to real time as possible, and ignore the stuff around it. So these walls behind me would not be refreshed very often because they aren't moving. Mm-hmm. And the codec recognizes what's in motion and what isn't. So this technology had to advance, and the bandwidth had to advance. So there's only so much you can compress, and only so much bandwidth you can limit yourself to in order to make this work in a medical capacity. The extreme point on that would be the robotic surgery I was talking about. When you're doing minimally invasive surgery, you're essentially taking probe-like things and going into the body with small incisions, and then operating through the view of a camera and doing what you need to do, sticking the stomach, moving cancer cell, whatever it is. That can be attached to a device called a robot, which mechanical arms hold those devices and then they're entered in. And it is controlled through an interface that the doctor sits in front of and watches real time and sees what it does. You can do that in the OR itself or over distance. Now, when they started saying I can do this, and I can perform a complex surgery from thousands of miles away, there couldn't be any error in packet losses and dropped connectivity. The patient would be at risk. So these, when these kinds of, this level of medical telemedicine are in play, you're talking about significantly larger bandwidth dedicated to that particular moment in time. And there are ways to architect solutions around making that happen. But in the general purpose of a consult, where I'm a physician and there's a stroke victim who's come in, I need to be able to see them. I need to have real skin tones. I need to be able to see if they're flush or if they're pink. I need to see these things. I need to be able to see their eyes and in a way that would be akin to being there, so that I can properly diagnose what's going on. And that is now commonplace bandwidth capable. And with that, and with that infrastructure, that makes what we do now in telemedicine possible, beyond just those images that we used to share back and forth and do collaboration on. We have full-on real-time collaboration.
Okay, I think Mohamad has some questions.
Yeah, well, some really interesting talk has been going on, and I really understand the potential of telemedicine because I've been doing some research myself for about a year now before starting developing our platform. What my question is, or what I want to share with you is like, what is your thoughts about the evolution of telemedicine on a global scale, given that telemedicine is relatively early in its early days, and it's only been seeing light, as you said, in the past 3 or 5 years, being really reaching patient homes and interacting with patients without outside the hospital setting. So, in terms of global applications or global landscape, do you see telemedicine as being one network that's going to hold all the physicians worldwide and patients, or is it going to be evolved in terms of pockets, like each country or each region will have its own telemedicine platform, and then we'll have to think about interoperability and how we're going to connect this network, because at the end the power of telemedicine is being connected all over the world, because now in America we see like I think it's going to reach like 50 companies doing telemedicine with different business models and different I think objectives, but I think the real power of telemedicine is not going to be realized unless we have this uniform network or uniform platform where all these physicians and patients could interact. So I don't know how you see this like evolving in the future in terms of nationally and globally.
Right. So absolutely brilliant astute observation about how do we get there. You're right about that. What is happening in the technology sector is partially akin to the evolving of telemedicine, but the business and the social, actually, the social has been driving this more than anything else. How do you get different platforms? And at this point, there are 2 communication platforms here. There's SIP and H.323. In simplest terms, that's just 2 different ways that communication happens. One, H.323, has a lot more layers of communication that qualify the signal and make it a little bit sharper, crisper, clearer, but take a little more processing power and functionality. SIP is a simpler, less communication to achieve the same end goal, so less communication stack protocols. SIP is used think of it in terms of being used for mobile. So if I've got a phone and I'm going to chat with you over the video of the phone, I'm going to be using SIP. The way in which we are going to enable these devices, these manufacturers, each with their own little format. You can't take a Skype and call an iPhone, and you can't take an iPhone and call a Polycom. That's changing at a hub level. And that hub level is basically, think of it as a translator. So when you make a call to a particular connection, you go through the translation. It doesn't care if you're SIP or 323. Call comes into we call it the black box. And in that black box, the communication part of it that says, this is who I am, this is what I want to do, is stripped away, and you're left with just the raw communication of video. And that is typically in an MPEG-4 format at this point. And that's a fairly standard across globe format for digital video processing and encoding. So once you've ripped away the communication portal part of it, then you've got, it's simple to just have that conversation. So this black box, Cisco puts out I just purchased it now, applies a product called ACOM, Kana, ACOM, Kana. And that's the whole function behind it is, and involved out of social, is that you can start cross-platform communication, and you don't have to worry about that. I think that what's going to happen is that the core components of the codec, and the codec is the core center of everything that is the connectivity and communication. It takes in the video, it encodes it in a particular format, it applies it to a particular communication protocol, 323 or SIP, and sends it out for the link. Using these black boxes for interface communication is the way in which we're going to circumvent these individual things. If you go back far enough in time, you remember when the fax machine came out. The fax machine from HP, between HP and HP, worked brilliantly, and you got a almost exact photocopy, no issues or problem. But when you connect to or send a signal to IBM, you didn't get so much. So the international standards bodies said, okay, we're going from 7 layers of communication that give you a beautiful replication of what you just had, down to 5 that everybody has to agree on. And these 5 have to be in every system. Well, subsequently, we got faxes as we see them now, which are, I can read it, I certainly wouldn't frame it, but it's communication, and it's a level at which they ought to be. But if I did still communicate between an HP and an HP, that would be brilliant. Even though the minimum standard was 5, those 2 have additional layers that they can talk at. So if I go, I have iPhone to iPhone, that's going to work brilliantly. If I go through this black box, unlike the HP model and the IBM model, it's not going to degrade my video. So the evolution has been just take the communication portal off, allow the video as a single standard of MPEG-4 to stand on its own. If everybody agrees on MPEG-4 or MPEG-5 or MPEG-6, whatever the next several generations are, then stripping off the communication part is a very simple manner. And it won't matter what you're using in the way of device. Everybody will be connected. We're already starting to do that. The other piece that is important to remember goes back to the security that I was talking about. When you are working in terms of medicine here in the U.S., we have a thing called HIPAA and security components that it dictates you have to be able to secure content data, the rest. And for a long time, the way in which networks were securing themselves was to alter the address of the device by doing what's called natting. And that is simply you convert its name so that only a system internally knows how to find it. And it has a ghost number associated. So its address was my last name instead of my first name, whatever. And you could not from the outside call in and get to that device because it would never see you calling it. That was one security component. Others were to block port 80 on the net on the firewall so you can't send a signal. These really aren't effective. They're good at protecting your firewall and keeping folks out, but you can't do that. And you can't know everybody who's going to call, so you can't put them in your database and say this person's okay, but that one's not. So what we had to do was come up with a firewall traversal process that is, again, ridiculous. If the communication protocols are 323 and SIP, as we mentioned, what happens is you go through a firewall traversal process. And that's, think of that as you've got a house with a fence around it and a gate and a call box out in front. So when I, patient X, called from the beach in Florida because I just got stung by a jellyfish. I get to the hospital, but I get to the call box outside the gate. I say, I need to talk to Dr. Jones, and it goes to Dr. Jones' interface device by saying the internal talk box. Dr. Jones notified Dr. Jones effectively comes outside of the gate. We meet, we consult, we have our interaction, and then we hang up. Dr. Jones goes back to the gate and into the house. I never made it in past the firewall. Our whole conference took place outside the firewall. That's firewall reversal that enables us to do this. The problem with video conferencing is that you can embed bad things in those streams and recount it if you've got through the firewall into the network where you really just you don't want them to be. So it's completely transparent to you and I doing the transaction that that's taking place. But that's how you secure your network against incoming calls. So between the stripping off of the protocol communication side, having the video talk to each other just in a big four, and having these firewall reversal components opens up the possibility for any doctor anywhere in the world to talk to any hospital anywhere in the world safely.
So I take from your words that we will still have these different platforms and different vendors, and the only issue is we're going to develop the kind of infrastructure and kind of protocol which will make them interoperable and talk to each other. So you think that we're not going to have like in the future like the Facebook of health or telemedicine, in which this like wide platform is going to take over, and then you will have like all these hospitals and clinics and patients integrating, and it's going to be like you don't think that's going to happen in terms of
I really don't, and the reason I don't think that's going to happen is because basically in the free market you have competition. Everybody's fighting to have the best widget, and while each is trying to develop something that distinguishes themselves as being the better widget, at its core, at its heart, everyone understands it has to communicate. They're not going to give up their widget. HP wasn't going to drop its 7-layer protocol communication with only 5, just so that it could talk to everything, and then it diminishes conversation between HP and HP. So if you get an HP and I get an HP, we're going to have great faxes. But if you need to communicate with somebody else, like again, fine. You'll get an image, but not so much. There will not be a time in which we would expect to see one single platform, one single communication, simply because you have too many people who have a vested interest in the development of solutions in solution space. And that's a good thing because it's going to force them to get better. But when you narrow all the widgets and the jewelry and all the glitz, you strip that away, at the heart is a video encoding algorithm and pay for it. And then at the moment, 2 platforms which respectively need to be there simply because of device limitations. My phone, while powerful, is not as powerful as I can make my desktop PC dedicated to video encoding and crunching. Because that process of encoding, of crunching that video from an analog signal into a digital signal, and then compressing that into something that will go across the streams that I'm working with for telephone and wirelessly. So it needs to have, the bandwidth is this, you have to reduce how much information you're shoving over that in order to have a better video, better audio, and data sharing. The communication has to be strong. Something has to give in that bandwidth, And in this case, that is the layers protocol. And so SIP is a mobile, good for a mobile application. You wouldn't use the same processor for a machine used to crunch data on expanses of space as you would phone. Different chips, different needs, different processors. So I think you'll always have these deltas of development, but when it comes to actually bringing them together, there will be physical devices that allow that to happen and make those differences disappear so that we can have that ubiquitous communication piece.
Let me just make one comment. One thing we talked about it a little bit, Mohammed, before, and maybe Gary will learn a little bit too. Could you comment on the issues that Gary was talking about in Libya? The issues of broadband, security, privacy, and legality of telemedicine. Could you briefly touch on those four areas in Libya?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Libya, the situation, I think it's similar to several of the developing countries. We have our challenges, but at the same time, we have these opportunities that are seen like challenges in other developed countries. So, for example, broadband and connectivity is I think it's one of the biggest challenges we have in Libya, as much as is it in any developing country. Many of the regions in the country, Libya is the fourth largest country in Africa, bigger than than South Africa and other countries. So that's really a challenge. And the people are distributed all over the country. So internet connection as well as mobile connection is a real challenge to find. And as Roger said, with telemedicine, you have to have a high standard of video conferencing quality. So it's not like the standard quality used for conferencing. So that's one of the biggest challenges. Also, the awareness to technological uses in medicine in general. So I don't know if patients or doctors are going to accept the fact that they could reach the patients through computers, and if patients are really accepting to the fact that they could receive a proper diagnostic encounter through a screen. So that's really challenging, and this is one of the aspects we're working on before implementing our platform. We're currently working with teams from UK and Belgium just to research the market landscape and just to assess the attitudes of both patients and Libyan physicians to telemedicine and see how much they're aware about the technology and they're ready to accept it. But I think one of the opportunities we have in Libya is the legislation part, because in Libya we don't have many restrictions when it comes to internet medicine in general, and all the privacy issues that I think the US and UK and other countries have in terms of HIPAA regulations and other regulations. So I think this is a real opportunity to make some kind of breakthrough before it becomes more restrictive. So I think So I think this is I think this is what I say to many of the people and partners I try to speak with, especially with the instabilities going in the region. I think having security issues for online medication or treatment, I don't think it holds a priority on the list of issues that they are now dealing with. And I think this is where we have the opportunity. I think if we implement a solution now, we're going to set the standards for future regulations. So that's what's really exciting, because we're going to pioneer in this region, and then we're going to tell the legislation officials, well, this is going to work and this is not, rather than have the rules and then just figure out how we're going to work with them. So I think that's one of the opportunities we have in the region, and also the market. So as I said before, in America, I think now you have, like, between the established companies and the startup companies which are really excited about this new technology, like in Silicon Valley. I think there is a new startup every 3 days, which claims to have like which claims to have some type of telemedicine solution, whether it's by phone or SMS or doing some kind. And of course, all of them are going to be washed out. It's just a pure excitement, because there should be a certain model that's going to work. And I think all the startups, what are doing now, I think what all the startups are doing now and the companies are just testing different models, and eventually the best model is gonna conquer the region, and is gonna prove himself.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The folks that are going to drive this and make those peel away the onion, if you will, to get to the best model, that is going to be you, the provider, because you may not know how you get there, but you know what it is you want, and the level of your expectation is what's going to drive it, always. The provider is in the driver's seat when it comes to acceptance or rejection of a particular solution. I'm very excited about your work in Libya because, like you said, you basically have a blank slate that's ready to be developed. So on the, I would say, first thing that has to happen is that your infrastructure has to be there in a network capacity. So your broadband communication network, whether it's microwave, satellite, fiber, whatever it is that gets you to each of your states, that has to be in place from a medical grade, we'll call it medical grade standard. And in California, what they did, a long time ago, they had what they called Internet 2, and basically it was a second layer of the Internet, but it was exclusively for education. And all of the universities and junior colleges, all the schools, everybody could use that for sharing and communicating and having distance communication. Well, when telemedicine started coming into play, they realized, hey, we need something that's a little more secure, something that not a lot of traffic across. And they looked over and they saw the education network and Internet 2. They said, we really like that. We're going to camp on this with you. Didn't give them much of an option. They had to do it. That network was developed by the government, but is not regulated by government per se. The entity that manages it and that is affiliated with government, but it's not. I don't know what the right way to say that is, but it's utilized for just those two purposes: education and medicine. You will traverse in and out about the public network at some point, but with your access rights and code, you go from public onto that, and that is a safe, secure space for communication that lessens the amount of traffic that's out. So your node hopping is much better, etc. So your infrastructure for that, get that in place. And telemedicine is a natural fold. The devices and things that you have to put on each end of your public network for your infrastructure, not such a difficult task. In the case of hospitals, for example, when we put in cards and things, we know that there has to be a certain amount of bandwidth available, and we use wireless for the most part simply because it's more convenient than running around trying to find a plug for you. But initially, when they put the infrastructure in place for wireless for hospitals, it was for paging systems. It was for some communication with the electronic health record, some accident stuff. So not a lot of heavy use. So they didn't look at the density of the nodes for the wireless communication throughout the hospital, didn't look up the dropout points, and they certainly didn't account for growth in bandwidth capacity. So a lot of hospitals, even in some of our more developed cities, are looking at their infrastructure going, we're not qualified. We can't meet the minimum standard of internal communication. So the hospitals, the facilities, the clinics have to look at that and decide if they have dedicated network infrastructure just for telemedicine. If they camp on the same system, if they do camp on the same system, come back to that whole how do you traverse the firewall to keep things and safe, if that's a concern for that region. Bandwidth, that's your pivot point and your success or failure. And then there are just a stream of options, starting with the general practitioner interface, maybe just the nurse practitioner interface for the patient who has a fever. Lowest common denominator of medical interaction. And so what is your fever? They put a thermometer in, it's a Bluetooth, it's right across the device. They can see what your temperature is. Oxygenation of the blood, they can Bluetooth. So those Internet of Things devices that are coming in our places, that Internet of Things enables that freedom to have that initial consultation, which keeps them out of the hospital, keeps them out of the OR, ER, and even keeps them out of your general practitioner's office with something less important. And it can be escalated very quickly, starting with that initial triage or consult, to either make a prescription, send over go over to get your prescription and send it out. Or I'm going to escalate this and I want you to go into an urgent care 24-hour service, or I want you to go to the hospital. So they can quickly figure it out. The hospital or wherever they're sending them can be notified ahead of the patient actually getting there, so they're already ready for them, and all their information is ready. It's just you're in, they know why you're there, and you move through the process much, much faster. So having an all of the above approach to telemedicine, from the app all the way through to remote clinic specialist to robotic surgery, having that whole frame to work with would demonstrably improve medicine and its delivery wherever we are. But it starts with that major infrastructure in Libya, then it moves to the devices and the adoption. But your key point is adoption, and you as the physician and your colleagues educating each other and educating your patients on the effectiveness and reliability of this solution. And when it stops being reliable, they stop believing, and then they want that security blanket. Can I hold your hand, shake your hand? I feel better.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So it's an education for sure.
Yeah, I think the education part is really crucial. I've read like at the past 2 weeks, I think a study which has been released here in the States. I don't know who was conducting the study, but it revealed that 60% of patients do not trust any diagnostic encountered by computer or by telemedicine, which was a little bit frightening, and a little bit concerning. But it really shows you how much there's a lack of awareness and education on the potential of this technology, because apparently it works, but not many patients know that, and the number goes higher as I think at the ages. So millennials, I think, are really accepting of the fact of telemedicine, but
yes,
it's always the seniors.
Growing up knowing nothing more than a cell phone, they can't imagine a day when this little bugger wasn't handy and it could do anything at any time. You and I look back and go, wait, there were payphones and there were buses and there were, I didn't have instant access to anything. How fast could I get from one place to another? That was my instant access. So in a very short window, we have taken an entire world culture and gone, hey, instant everything. If you're 35 or older, you're not as readily accepting of instant everything. And it's going to be a cultural shift. It's going to be a generational, not cultural, but generational shift of acceptance of comfort level. And it scares me how comfortable the kids are with these things. Probably too comfortable. And but that is your market. That's the group that's going to say, hey, mom, dad, don't worry about it. Let me get the doctor on the phone. You can get an instant response and know right away what to do. And I think that is going to be the selling point, even for the older generation. Um, it'll be nice to have that. And knowing you're still in the office down the street. I can still go knock on your door, I can still shake your hand. They'll talk about the food and you have water and whatever. And but I think so. It's really two different things. The technology will always be available before the public acceptance of what the technology brings. So that strategic inflection point that is telemedicine in culture and in generational acceptance. Technology here, acceptance is just a little further out. So that curve is going technology, people are not.
Yeah.
But I think the sooner that we get to it, I think the better we're going to be positioned to make a significant difference and improvement in their health and in our ability to get the right medical treatment in an in-time capacity.
Yeah. Let me make one comment before we wrap it up. And I think I may have told this to Mohamad. Was that I was interacting with some Indian doctors in northern India, and they have actually Microsoft is doing a lot of experimenting up there with low bandwidth telemedicine, and they're actually have some companies, and I told Mohamad about this before. I'll try to find the article where they had a company that's actually not making a lot of money, but they're making a little bit of money, just charging $1 or $2 in India, because obviously the costs are a lot less there to maintain the system. But they have a saying because they encounter the same resistance, and they say to the people, "Well, it's either telemedicine doctor or no doctor. What do you want?" So
yeah. Yeah, a little bit harsh, but yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, well, I just want to comment about the technologies and the companies going in this arena of low bandwidth telemedicine. I think also there is this platform. I think Roger knows about it, which is WebRTC. Yeah, I think I think it holds lots of promise in terms of low bandwidth telemedicine and video conferencing in general. I think Doctors Without Beyond Borders has been working with it in Africa and many sub-Saharan countries, and even here in the States, some startups are adopting WebRTC as the means of communication and the main platform. So yeah, I think web platforms and technologies such as WebRTC are going to be the future in terms of providing low bandwidth telemedicine and video conferencing and making it possible in countries where you don't have the 4G networks and the high capabilities that developing countries have. And I think this is where we're gonna start in Libya. I think maybe WebRTC is gonna be one of our fundamental resources in terms of developing our platform. I don't know if there's any other vendors or any other outsourced technologies that we can use, but I think WebRTC is definitely going to be one of our first choices.
Yes, absolutely. WebRTC, RTP is real-time communication.
Mm-hmm.
Real-time
Yeah.
communication, RTC. And what it means is that there's less communication going back and forth, reducing the amount of bandwidth requirement and making it simpler to get the same compression across that same limited bandwidth. It's a marvelous tool. In fact, I was talking with a colleague the other day who asked specifically if the developer of a codec that bringing two entities together, and one of them is developing a proprietary codec for the other, and they wanted specifically to make sure that it would be RTC or real-time communication RTC, and the answer is absolutely. I don't think we're going to be building codecs, building communication, telemedicine infrastructure, tools, any other way for that very reason. And bandwidth is precious.
Yeah, and I think it's also secure. I think there is also an encryption functionality, so that's also good in
Right.
terms of security issues. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can get past the issues of the you used to have a secure protocol line, and unfortunately, video wouldn't go across because it already was wrapped in encryption, and that would mess it up to go across your encrypted line. It just made it very difficult, and this simplifies absolutely everything. No, absolutely. And are you working right now with anybody that's doing any development for you in terms of helping you get to this place? You said you've done a lot of research in that. Are you working with any developers?
Well, actually now, as I said before, I just started contacting developers and people who are in this field in development, both from the United States and India, and I've had really good responses. We're just in the process of building a team, so just figuring out how much it's going to cost and the time. So yeah, because we're still in the early stages, we're still conducting the survey, as I said before, with teams from Belgium and UK, just assessing the market and having the statistics and reasoning for our venture. But in terms of the development aspects, we are just getting started. So just building a team and just looking into different technologies. We're also thinking about introducing a cloud-based electronic medical record system, because there's no electronic medical system in Libya, and definitely that's So I think because that's gonna help telemedicine, because I think they go side by side. The doctors who is gonna see you must have your medical information, and
exactly.
So this is we're thinking about integrating a cloud-based EMR with our platform. So yeah, we're just thinking we're doing just the research stages now.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and the developers of the electronic health records are evolving along with it and saying, okay, we will give you capacity and space for taking this consult that we're having, that recording, and embedding it into the electronic health record as a source. It's obviously a pointer, but it's a source within the record that the doctor can refer back to and recall the entire session that you had. And it's hugely helpful. Yes.
Well, gentlemen, we look forward to having you both back on when we ever have a telemedicine subject. That's certainly an area that I don't know much about at all, but I'm learning. So we'll just wrap up the broadcast and we'll just hang out after the broadcast. Thank you very much.